All right, well, the good news is you have made it. We are at the end of this lecture series, and I'm just going to talk briefly about action standards. Now again, this is not to suggest that they're not important. It's just to suggest that we're going to be working with them in class, and you're going to be learning how to use them hands-on. But I want you to have a good understanding of what they are, so let me go through them really quickly. Once you have a clearly defined research problem, and you've written up some good research objectives, you really need to figure out what you're going to do with the data once you have it, how you're going to react to it. And it's better if you can do that before you collect the data than after, for a number of reasons, which I'll go through in a moment. But what we do in response to this need is we create what we call action standards before we actually go out and collect data. And really, action standards are important for three reasons. First of all, during the design process and the even the fieldwork gathering process, they help you to stay focused on what you need to know and not to collect data that aren't focused on your problem, your research problem that you're ultimately trying to solve. Action standards can also help you to stay accountable, even if and especially if you don't like what the data have to say. So if you set good action standards and then you get unfavorable results from your survey, you'll have a plan of how to deal with them, and you'll be accountable to that plan, even if you don't like what the data had to say. And it won't allow you to just easily discard the data and throw it out because it didn't tell you that you were great. Rather, it'll give you a prescribed course of action, and whether or not you follow that action is up to you, but at least you will have taken the step to write it down and have a plan on how you're going to react to the data. Finally, action standards help you think through the way you'll use the research so that you don't have analysis paralysis later on. And I told you, I see this as being one of the big problems of marketing research, is that you can research things to death and as an organization, and you can always call for more research. In fact, that's exactly what the government does anytime it's faced with a problem, is rather than solve the problem, most of the time it calls for a study on something. That analysis paralysis that occurs can be very difficult, very formidable if you are someone that wants to enact change. And in an organization where you want to change things, having good action standards is important so that you're not stuck debating what the research means. You know how you're going to act on it as soon as you get the data. So how do you develop an action standard? Well, first of all, it's good to think broadly about the research and to write down the actions that you believe that you're going to take if the research should present certain findings. I'll give you a couple of examples here in a moment. Once you've thought about the actions that you might take, think about the decisions that are required to reach each action. So you know what you maybe are going to do. Think about what decision is going to lead you to that point, and write that decision down as well, and then determine how those decisions are going to be impacted by the research and what's going to trigger your action that you're anticipating. So a lot of times what's going to trigger your action is really going to be something along the lines of you're going to have to meet a certain threshold, or you're going to have to see a certain level of success with the question that you're asking, or a certain level of failure with the question you're asking, in order to be able to actually act on it. And this is important because it's really easy to say, oh yeah, I'll act on this if it's sufficiently worth my attention. But if you don't take the time to define what that means, you're not accountable to actually act on it, and you may change your mind when you see the data. It may be easier to go after something else that's less important. So it's good to have a well-developed understanding of what you want to do with the data before you collect it, so that you're not, when you have it, you're not stuck trying to figure out how you want to react to it. You've already made those decisions, and you're just going to follow your decision tree that you've set up. So, some examples of good action standards would be, here are a couple that I'm going to provide. We could say, if we find that 50% or fewer of our customers are highly satisfied with our customer service, we'll conduct focus groups to learn more about how we can serve them better. So in other words, if fewer than half the people we survey are happy with us, we'll do some focus groups and we'll figure out what we can do to improve that customer service. We could also say, if we find that 75% of consumers prefer a test concept over the others, we will bring it to market within the next year. So in other words, if we're testing some concepts and one of them is preferred by 75% of consumers over all the other ones, then we're going to commit to bringing that to market, because we consider that to be a pretty surefire success. Now, action standards don't always have to be quantitative like this, although they generally are going to be more focused on quantitative data than qualitative data, just because it's easier to set action standards based on quantitative data. But hopefully this gives you an idea of how specific they should be and how they should really be talking about action. And often, you know, you're also going to write what you're going to do in the event that your action standard's not met. So you might say if you know, if it's less than 75%, then we will refine the concept and retest it or something like that. Or if it's between 50 to 75%, we will look for opportunities to tweak the concept before bringing it to market. You know, you might have decision alternatives like that listed as well. But the point of action standards is ultimately, again, to hold yourself accountable before you collect the data, so that you're not influenced by the negativity or the positivity of the data once you receive it, or by the uncertainty of the data, for that matter. Action standards help you know how to act, how to respond, and also how to anticipate what you're going to hear before you hear it, so that there are no surprises, or no big surprises anyway. With that said, you have made it through Lecture Series 2, and congratulations. I hope you've learned a lot. I hope you've enjoyed it. Not all lecture series will be this long or this detailed, I promise you. And in fact, Lecture Series 3, while it will be detailed, will not be as long. I can tell you that for sure. If you have any questions, please contact me. I'd be very happy to help you out. I would encourage you to read through the lecture notes in your textbook before you contact me, but I'm happy to clear anything up. There are some things that I have said in this series that are a little different from what your textbook has to say. One of those things that's specific is my explanation of research objectives. The way that I explain them, the way that I use them in practice, is different from how your textbook authors define them, and I'm going to mention that more in the lecture notes. But if you're confused about why my method is different, that's okay. There's not always a right or a wrong way to do things. There are just ways that work better in practice and that work less well in practice, and that's all right. If you find yourself confused about defining the problem, I particularly recommend that you view a optional lectional series that I'm going to be putting up within the next week or two that walks you through a few examples of how to define a problem, set research objectives, and set action standards. I think you'll find it really useful. Thanks very much, and we'll see you in the next series.